In accordance with the provisions of the Everett City Charter, Article 3, Section 5B, I hereby call a special meeting of the City Council to be held as follows on Monday, April 9, 2018, at 6 p.m. The subject is, item number 1, is to conduct a public meeting in accordance with Massachusetts general laws in order to discuss the capital needs and funding requirements to establish a Chapter 74 approved vocational technical education program.
Get a motion to invite the mayor and staff before us?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good evening. Good evening. So I think it's no surprise to any of you that I've been a proponent of vocational programming. If you follow me on social media, which maybe we shouldn't do that anywhere around here, but if you follow me on social media, you'd see the last 5 or so years I've been touring different vocational schools and just looking at the opportunities they serve children. So as of recently, the schools have agreed, and we're on the right path to bring in some vocational program to the city. But before they go any further, there's going to be a capital expense needed to renovate the high school. And I thought it'd be in the best interest to have this meeting with you all. As you know, I have a capital improvement plan, but it's not my plan, it's our plan, mine and yours together. And I think it's about $600,000 in cost to renovate 5 or 6 existing to create 6 classrooms. The staffing needed will be in this year's budget. There is an expense to the staffing, and Charlie, Assistant Superintendent Obremski, can speak a little further about that. But before they go any further, and it gets, they're having stakeholder meetings, which I know a few of you have been to. Mayor, I know you've come, and Councilman McLaughlin has been at a couple, and I know you all have talked to me about it. Each individual, we have had this conversation. But I want them to come up here. They have some consultants that are working on this, on the programming. I want you to see the programming, understand what's going on, because this will be in the CIP plan, and if you agree to it, it would be probably one of the first things that we ask to be appropriated to spend. All right, so it almost feels like before putting the cart before the horse, right? So I need to know, you need to be comfortable, ask the questions, and then and I guess we'll go from there. I don't think there's a piece on the calendar to appropriate the money to spend. Is there? I don't think that's come to us yet before you. So this is, and that will have to come to you sooner than later. So we'll have this meeting, and then I will probably be putting the request in. I don't have to wait to the CIP plan. I'll probably put the request in at any time. And you can ask, Mr. Demas, of course, your questions regarding affordability and all that stuff. And, of course, you want to know about finances, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions you want to ask. But I wanted to get it going and give you some time, months, really, to talk about this. And if you want to have conversations with me, of course, in small groups or individually on a later date. So I believe they have a PowerPoint presentation for you. So I just felt that it was, especially with all this stuff going on with the school's budget and stuff, and, there's probably a lot of questions, so I wanted to make sure you guys got all your questions answered. So if you don't have any questions for me now, but if you do, great. Yeah.
Councilman McLaughlin.
I'd just like to record myself as present at this meeting, Mr. President. Thank you.
Councilman McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, on these, I know vocational schools, when they actually, are we going to be utilizing it for just the citizens of Everett, or is it going to be utilized for surrounding towns too as well?
Great question. I don't know if Mr. Lyons will want to answer that, or Mr. Obremski, but I'm sure eventually the goal is to bring back all vocational programming.
Because I know, the reason why I'm asking, Mr. Mayor, is because
we can make some money.
There is certain amounts of money to be made per student once they come from a different surrounding community, and I just wanted to make sure that we're part of that if we're doing that.
Yeah, that's
just like Wakefield,
Great question, and I'm sure if there's spaces available, if we go full-blown, I'm sure these 6 programs will be filled up with the kids that we have, but if they're not, That's something that, Mr. Obremski, if you want to come up quickly and just answer
Can
that.
we
or
invite Mr.
Lyons.
Obremski up, please?
Second. I have a motion from right, Mr. Ennis, and a second, all in favor?
Aye,
Is that on?
thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Obremski.
Thank you. My name is Charles Obremski, Assistant Superintendent of Schools for the Everett Public Schools. And yes, obviously, at first, there would be the vocational programs that we will talk to you about this evening will be open to Everett students. But if there was room for out-of-district students, we would be willing to have those kids tuition them in at a rate that is set between the Everett Public Schools and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Is that, Mr. Obremski, sorry,
You still have the floor.
okay, thank you. With that being said, the amount of per student out of district would be, what, probably about a $7,000 figure?
It's probably closer to about between $13,000 and $15,000 for a
up that.
vocational student.
Okay, so, yeah, I was going on the cheaper side. So it's 13 now.
Between $13,000 and $15,000.
Wow.
It fluctuates every year.
So we would take care of our own Everett, and then we would go and look out of district at that rate.
Yes, if there were room available, yes.
Okay. Thank you on that.
Thank you.
Councilman DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I think this is a great idea. It's a long time coming. I know that we had the vocational before, but then for some reason, things change, and everybody's going to college, and, it just was, there was no room because we didn't have enough students going to the vocation. But I think things are changing now differently. We have to get people in, we have to get kids in to do electric, to do plumbing, to do other things, keep them safe, keep them off the street, and so I'm very happy that this is in front of us. And I know we have enough time to study this, so any questions will obviously go to the Finance Committee when it comes to the time for the appropriation. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
I think if they want to get these 6 classrooms ready for September, I think if you feel that these 6 classrooms are appropriate to construct and spend city's dollars, I think it's about $600,000, Charlie?
It's about $700,000.
$700,000, if that's something that we feel is, just a start, this is just now,
Just a start.
just
I
6
understand.
classes, there's no electrical and plumbing in these 6 classes, but that is the plan. We are looking at expanding the vocational programming, but that's something that we need to talk about as a group. Because that will be, we have to find a location, if it's, if it's in addition to the school now, but that's a conversation we'll have, but right now, with the
This
6.
is at the new high school, is
This is
that
at the new high
correct?
school now, these are
So
these
this-
6
this is-
classrooms.
but my question is, this is time sensitive.
This will be time sensitive, because I'm assuming, Charlie, we want to, both
I
Charlies?
can answer that.
Right.
We also have our architect here that can give you a better layout of the dates, but we're already a little bit behind bidding it out, going through the bidding process, getting a contractor on board, because, as you know, we don't end school till June 29th this year. That's unofficial, of course, but right now, the last day of school is June 29th. So we only have about 6 or 7 weeks to actually do this construction before we start school for the next year. So it is very time sensitive. I think that's part of the reason the mayor brought this forward to you so quickly on behalf of the school department, so we get the money appropriated as soon as possible. To
Okay,
be able to
so-
go through the process with the procurement officer.
Right. So my question is, we don't have an order in front of us.
Right,
So-
to go out to bid, we have to have the money secured first.
Right, but right now, what I'm saying is we don't
There's
have. an
no
in
order
front of us.
before you, this is
So-
this is just to show you what the plan is, and then to give you some information, and then the next one, to look forward to is seeing an order maybe in the next week or two, looking for the funding to construct.
Because according to our charter, you give us the order the next time, we can't vote on it the same time. It either has to go to committee, or it has to be voted on the following.
Right, so that was the
following
reason.
Is that correct,
That
Mr.
is correct.
President? Okay.
Or the mayor could call it an emergency measure.
So
and-
that's.
And we can vote on it.
Okay, that's what I'm getting to.
So I went to a stakeholder meeting, and I saw, not that there was any disconnect, but, the schools know, and actually, Mr. Lyons worked for me at one time as my consultant, now he works for the schools. But,
Did such a good job, we brought him
yeah,
over.
he did such a good job, exactly. So I'm sitting there and saying to myself, if we want this ready for September, the city council hasn't even seen the order for appropriation for funds. And I think I called Charlie up, I said it that night, we have to get this before the city council immediately. I grabbed Mr. Lyons also, so that's why we're here this evening, you need to be in the loop real quick. I think a lot of you knew this was happening because there was the second stakeholders meeting. I'm pretty sure you knew it was coming, but I also wanted to make sure you knew that there was a financial obligation from the city to for this to begin. Again, this is 6 programs. Our intentions are to, as you said, Councilwoman DeFlorio, is to bring back a full-blown vocational programming. And as you know, not every kid can go to college these days, and there's so many great jobs out there that we're losing.
We're losing
we're
people.
losing
There's
that.
no more craftsmen.
Yeah, you're right, exactly. So, I don't want to further this conversation,
But I
but
mean, anyways, I'm 100% for this, so.
thank you.
It's, I think it's a no-brainer. Thank you.
I have 2 speakers that have questions, but I'm going to ask if they could, if they feel that it would be better to hold until after the presentation. Okay, great. Okay. All right. Well, it's all yours.
Okay, I think Mr. Lyons, you want to bring your group up? Yep.
If it's okay, I'd like to bring our other consultant along with this is Charlie Lyons, who's a retired superintendent of Shawshene Vocational.
Motion made to have them before. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Roger Bourgeois, who's retired superintendent of Greater Lowell. And I'd also like to bring our architect from CBI, Greg Christensen. First of all, I'd like to thank you for bringing the school department before you tonight to give you a presentation on bringing back vocational education. As most of you know, it's been about 20 years since we had true vocational education in the city of Everett. With the changing job market and the fact that many of our students can no longer afford to go to college, the time is right to make this move to bring back Chapter 74 vocational. I'd like to just let the committee and the people at home watching this evening that we would not be here this evening if it was not for the help of Mayor Carlo Di Maria and an entire administrative staff. They've been very supportive of us every step of the way on this, and we've had multiple meetings in regards to vocational education. So I'd like to thank the mayor for that. And as I said, I'd like to introduce you to our 2 consultants. This is Charles Lyons, president of Lyons Consulting. Charlie spent 28 years as the vocational director at Shawshene. Under his leadership, his school was consistently a level 1 school and earned academic commendations by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. His extensive background in municipal and school finance. The other consultant that works with Mr. Lyons, Roger Bourgeois, he's the project director of Lyons Consulting. He has 37 years' experience in vocational technical education and administration, served as superintendent of Greater Lowell from 2013 to 2017. And he also worked at Essex Agricultural and Technical School, where he oversaw renovations, one in the amount of $65 million and one in the amount of $135 million. So he has extensive background overseeing vocational construction projects. The third person, Greg Christensen, from CBI Consultant. He's also been the architect of record at the recent Powland renovation, renovating the gymnasium and adding additional bathrooms. He also helped us last summer with the renovation of the old high school on the first floor. And I have nothing but praise for CBI and Greg, and his company has done a great job for us. Now to the PowerPoint that you have in front of you. I believe I put a copy on for everybody. Does everyone have a copy of the PowerPoint? If you go to page 3, these are the 6 programs that we intend to bring back for the 2018-2019 school year. Carpentry, culinary arts, health assisting, machine tool technology, and with the new casino being built in Everett, we'd like to add hospitality management and marketing. So those are the 6 programs we intend to start for next school year.
You need a question while in the middle of the presentation?
Okay.
What do you have those?
They're not true Chapter 74 certified programs. We do have them, but the amount of time the students can spend in a row in the same room is limited. Once we go to Chapter 74, they'll be able to spend more than one period and then go to like math or English. They'll be able to spend multiple periods in a row in there and be able to come out with a certificate that will help them in the job market.
Okay, good enough.
The next part on page 4, this will be Mr. Charles Lyons will talk to you about this.
Thank you. I just want to echo Mr. Obremski's commendation, I think, of the mayor, Di Maria, who's been wanting to build vocational programs at the high school since I've known him, and I've known him for quite a while. The superintendent and the school department is really engaged in this process, but it's not a simple, let's just have a program process. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has pretty much rewritten the regulations to ensure the establishment of these Chapter 74 programs meets certain high standards, the kinds of standards that many of the regional school districts around the state have met to tremendous success. I retired from an institution that had the highest cooperative placement rate in the Commonwealth, i.e. students working in jobs for which they were trained. We took a look at the existing programs you had, and the objective is to augment those standards so that they would end up getting Chapter 74 approved. It's a two-part process. The first thing is the department, and Mr. Forrester, needed to send a letter to the Department of Education back in September indicating the intent to apply for the 6 programs, 4 of which you've had in a limited non-Chapter 74 state, in the other 2, marketing and hospitality, which could be implemented without significant capital investment. Part A application that Mr. Bourgeois pretty much worked with your staff at Everett High School had to accomplish 4 different objectives. The first was to make sure that your local business and industry supported the establishment of these programs. So we've had 2 meetings now at Everett High School. Each of these programs has a craft advisory committee, which consists of many of employers in the city of Everett, and we provided to the Commonwealth sufficient information to indicate a market need for these programs. Second, we had to do a student interest survey for 8th and 9th graders, which was conducted a couple of months ago that indicated a student interest for these programs. Third, extensive labor market analysis. We took a look at every business in the city of Everett or nearby to indicate there was a need for employees in these programs. And finally, we needed to look at duplicative programs of any high school that's near us within a 5-mile radius. And we received support from the principals and superintendents of both Cambridge Ridge Latin, Medford High School, and Somerville High School, supporting the inclusion of these programs at Everett High School. The Department of Education did a desk audit of this, and you were the only high school in the state that had 6 programs approved as part of Part A with this submission. The next thing we have to do is we have to submit next week a Part B application. And again, your staff has been superb. We needed to continue the Craft Advisory Committee meetings, which we had about a week and a half ago at Everett High School. We needed to develop a list of facilities and equipment, which is going to be before you in another week or so, indicating the kind of capital infusion of funds that would have to go in to meet those standards. We had to put together a program of studies and methods of instruction. We actually had, working with your teachers and working with us, we developed lesson plans and applied learning projects that will be submitted as part of the Part B application. A health and safety plan must be presented for each program, which is being written now. We also have to develop a career exploratory program. In a few years, when these students are juniors, the end of their junior year and senior year, will they have the ability to go work in an exploratory program with a local employer? We need to solidify that the qualifications of personnel meet the certification requirements established by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We need to file an admissions plan to ensure that there's no bias in terms of placement of students into the program, that it's done in a non-biased way. And finally, we actually have to file, and we've submitted this to Mr. Obremski and the superintendent, a budget situations for the next 3 years of how these programs will be supported to maintain those standards. So that's part of the Part B application. The next steps, the application for Part B will be submitted on April 13th. There'll be a Department of Education desk review to determine if we've met those standards or if there's any missing information that needs to be provided. They then will schedule an on-site evaluation of two of the programs which are currently in existence in May and June, culinary arts and health assisting. You have expansive staff in those programs. All your 5 culinary arts chefs are Chapter 74 certified, and your health assisting teachers are all Chapter 74 certified. In September, after you do the renovations to the high school, to make sure the carpentry program shop space is large enough, it isn't right now, to make sure that your machine technology shop space is large enough, it isn't right now, and also that you expand your hospitality program and your marketing program. After that's done, the Department of Education will come out, they'll evaluate these programs, assuming we meet those high standards, which I'm sure you will. They'll approve those programs as of November 1st. The good news is the approval or non-approval letters are sent out for those 2 programs at the end of June, culinary arts and health assisting, and hopefully by November 1st for those other 4 programs. What that means in terms of revenue for the city of Everett, for example, you will, and I think Mr. Obremski is going to speak to this, but you will see an increase in your foundation budget because it costs more money to run a vocational technical program than it does to run a chalkboard education program. You approved, I think, a couple of weeks ago at the City Council, correct me for saying this, a statement of interest for an expansion of Everett High School, which will include, in our hope, an additional 5 or 6 programs down the road, or maybe 7 programs, in the kinds of fields that the mayor has always talked to me about, plumbing, electrical, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, to name 3 of the 5 we're looking at. We'll have to go through a similar process for those programs. You don't have the space right now to offer those programs. The hope is you will, and all hands will be on deck with the mayor's leadership and the superintendent's leadership, and hopefully our support, our help, to make sure that you're able to offer those programs in a time-sensitive way to expand those programs at Everett High School. Nice meeting you all.
The next slide, please. And Mr. Bourgeois will speak about this slide.
If I could just make you aware before we continue, we have another committee scheduled at 6:30. Now, there's only one item on the agenda. What I'd like to do is if we get to a point where we can take a brief intermission, dismiss that portion of the business, and then reconvene, and so that we can continue the presentation. I'm not sure how much time was allowed, and we had maybe a little bit too much speaking right up front, but we do want to. We may need to do that, so I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, so I'll be brief then. And Mr. Lyons mentioned you have 4 existing programs. 2 of them are ready to go: culinary arts, health assisting. Health assisting needs to have a few sinks added. $9,000, I think, is in there for that. So they're ready to go. We're all set. Carpentry and machine tech need to be expanded. The minimum square footage that the department requires, they're under. Carpentry is only about half as big as it needs to be. There's a concrete block wall that can come down between carpentry and a storage area. So that's going to come down this summer and expand the space into there, and then we'll meet the requirement. In machine tech, it's adjacent to a printing area, and the printing area is going to be made a little, about half the size, and we're going to take the wall down and create a master cam lab inspection area in order to be able to meet the requirements for machine tool technology. In addition, we're going to add 2 brand new programs that don't exist. Hospitality, we've identified, with the help of staff, we've identified 2 classrooms side by side that we can take a sheetrock wall down in between. And that'll create the shop or the area for hospitality management. Hospitality management, state-of-the-art computer lab. There's a lot of computer and industry software that students learn. So that'll get us started with that program. In addition to that, there'll be an area, we've talked to some of the business partners about some donations of a front desk, simulated front desk area, a simulated hotel room area that will also be part of that shop. The other brand new program would be marketing. There's a central storage area. We're going to take a piece of that, and we're going to create a brand-new marketing shop lab. Again, similar to hospitality with state-of-the-art computer lab in it. The next slide is the F&E, the furniture and equipment. Primarily, it's for the marketing and hospitality because they don't have anything. So it's to buy the computers, the computer desks, those types of things. There are some extra computer desks there that will go into machine tool technology.
This is the slide he's speaking
Yeah,
about.
this is the slide here. There's some additional computer desks that'll go into the machine tool technology for that Mastercam area. We've actually applied for a grant that would supply the computers to go into the lab, but the grant does not cover the desks, so there's some extra desks for that. So that's the F&E slide. I think there was a slide, was there a slide in between there that I kind of skipped over?
And-
That's Greg's slide.
I mean, the architect, Greg Christensen, will speak about it unless you want to stop for a moment. It's totally up to you, Mr. Napolitano.
If we could, so we can dismiss the other piece of business and come right back to it, because I definitely see the value of this. I don't want any of the information lost on our members, but
The
we also
motion
have
would
to
be to
follow our rules as
postpone.
well. So I just need a motion.
Call for a recess?
I need a motion for a recess. Or actually, I can conduct it. I can call a recess, right? All right, so I'm going to ask if you could please stay in the chambers. We're going to take a brief recess. We'll resume once the next committee finishes its course of business. Thank you.
This is the Community and Business Development meeting. So if you're a non-member, please leave the chambers. Thank you. Get out. Okay, will the members of the Business and Community Development, please sit. This meeting will come to order. What are we doing?
Madam Chairman?
And we're not ready yet.
Oh, okay. Why?
Couple more minutes. The clock says 6:30, but
Oh, yeah, we can't start early. Forbid. Yeah. What do we got? Oh, I got this already. Where'd you get this? Joe. Oh, great, good.
Yes, we are.
okay, this meeting will come to order. Clerk will call the roll.
All right. We have Counselor DeFlorio.
Here.
We have Counselor Capone.
Here.
We have Counselor McKinnon.
Here.
And we have Counselor Allen.
Yeah.
We do have a quorum, and we've already saluted the flag, so if we could
All right.
first
so-
read the, could we please read the, first off, I think we have to read the,
I have to read it.
read the only
Yes.
item on the agenda.
The only item on the agenda, this is an ordinance sought by Counselor Peter Napolitano as president to amend Chapter 18, 163 by adding a new subsection C pertaining to the purchase of annual meter stickers.
Counselor Hanlon?
I talked to Joanne Gregory this evening. She had indicated to me that this is not a first-time thing. This has been around for a while. So I read the whole, my only comment would be, why do we need it? I'm making a motion that we send this out unfavorable, that we don't need it. Get rid of it. That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
Everybody's asleep.
I don't have a second on that motion, so the motion has not passed.
I make a motion, we refer it to the council with no recommendation.
So the motion is to refer to council with no recommendation. Do I have a second? No second on that motion. The motion has failed.
Make a
So
motion,
the
we
motion was for favorable action and recommended out to the city council. That was the original motion. Is that correct? So that motion
Not
stands.
mine, not tonight.
That was the original
Oh, okay,
motion in the
okay.
committee, Counselor. So that motion stands?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, someone make the motion.
I'll move favorable action.
Okay, there you go.
I have a motion for favorable action. I do have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Okay, make
A
it
motion-
adjourn.
Have a motion to
Second.
adjourn. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
By saying aye. All opposed? You have
Okay.
adjourned.
We have a quorum. I'm going to bring the meeting back to order, but ask our guests to please join us and resume, and thank you for their understanding.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to revert back to page number 6 on the slide presentation. And I'd ask the architect, Ray Christensen, to explain this slide to all the councilors.
I'll just back up a little, and I'll say that CBI performed an in-house cost estimate. At this level, we don't have a design, so we went through each space and did a quantity assessment of each space of what would be required. So the numbers you're looking at are, of course, the rough numbers. They're not based on a true design. So the numbers we've been discussing for each space, in addition to the ones you see on slide 6, the general conditions, the insurances, bond, fee, and overhead, these are all costs that the general contractor would carry. Escalation would simply be the longer there is between design and construction, the price of construction increases, and we've been seeing rapid escalation the last couple of years in construction. I believe this is based on 2.5% or 2.7%. And then the design and estimating contingency, this is the unknown of what we're going to discover during design. We're estimating that although we've gone through the building, there's most likely another $44,000 worth of things that we haven't accounted for yet in the design. I think right now we're carrying 20% design and estimating contingency. Usually by the time you get to construction, that drops to 10%. So that other 10% will get factored into design changes. The additional construction costs, again, we've added a lump sum here because of the unknown. We haven't gotten into the building. We haven't had all of our consultants, meaning the HVAC, electrical, plumbing, fire protection consultants. They haven't been in the building yet. They haven't started looking to see what this building is going to require once we start taking down walls, putting up new partitions, and dividing spaces. Typically, you'll have to redo the minimum fire protection, new lighting circuits, new power requirements, especially in the machine tool technology shop. So there's kind of a large gray area right now in these numbers, and we're trying to account for that simply because we don't have the authorization to go in yet and really start designing this.
Okay. If you could turn to page 8. So after the consultants all spoke and the architect, we have reconfiguration costs of taking some walls down, reconfiguring some spaces of $326,021. Additional construction costs of $122,919, and some furniture and equipment needs of $110,290, which brings that cost to $559,230. And if you turn to the next page, this is where it all tallies up. So you take that $559,230, add in CBI's costs, which would be $95,770. This is to do a schematic design, put all the contract documents together to send to Mr. Mareshi, the procurement officer. After the bids are received, going over the bids, determining who the low bidder is, the lowest qualified bidder is, sending that information to Mr. Mareshi, the procurement officer, and then to do the contract administration, and throughout the summer, attending 12 meetings. Mostly, we have a weekly meeting every week during construction period to make sure everything's on task and on time. That would also include 12 meetings. And we also included a contingency of $45,000 for what Mr. Christensen just talked about, the unknown factor. So our estimate this time is that if it was all right with you and the mayor, we would ask for $700,000 to do all these improvements to the present high school to bring back 6 vocational programs. And I just have a couple more and then I'll be finished. I'd just like you to know at this time, there are 28 vocational students out of the district that we pay tuition for. We pay $458,000 for those 28 students. And that does not count the $54,000 in transportation costs. So altogether, we're spending $512,000 as of today on sending kids to vocational schools, including the transportation costs. We presently have 475 eighth graders in the school system. Next year, if we start these 6 programs, we'd run all 475 through an exploratory program. And we would hope to get some 10th graders into that exploratory. As Mr. Lyon spoke to you already, that brings us about $4,500 more per student for each one of those students that takes vocational. So when we get our fiscal year 20 budget from the state, the foundation budget, we estimate it would be about 2.1 to 2.2 million higher than it is right now, just with the same amount of students. That's not an increase, that's not an inflation factor, that's just per those vocational students, between 2.1 and 2.2 million. I've been a lifelong resident, most of you know, my entire life. I've actually lived at the same address, believe it or not, for my entire life. And I hope that you would, when the mayor brings this before, you would vote to approve the $700,000 needed in capital improvement money to begin this project. When we present our school budget to you in late May, our school budget would include 4 new vocational teachers and 1 director. That would be included in the budget brought before you. We would not be asking you in the $700,000 that we brought together in our budget for fiscal year 19. And we've also conducted an intensive labor market analysis. We can go over that if you want for time. I won't at this time, but if you have a question, Mr. Bourgeois was happy to answer any questions on the labor market study. And we've also, so you know, applied for what's called a capital skills grant through the Executive Office of Education in the amount of $494,000. And that's for a lot of equipment for machine tool technology and health assisting. We're pretty sure we will get some of that money. I don't know if we'll get all of it, but we actually don't need that equipment until year 2 of the program. But we're pretty sure we will get that. I thank you for having us before you. I'd also like to let you know that we also have the principal of Everett High School, Mr. Norman, here to answer any questions, and the director of curriculum, Janice Gauthier, who's actually done most of the work on the school department side, sending all the information to Mr. Lyons and Mr. Bourgeois so we can get it to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on time. Thank you for having us before you this evening.
All right, thank you. Councilman Hanlon.
Mr. Chairman, I have 5 questions, and just so the gentlemen know, I'm interested in 1-word answers would be great, 2 words if you have to, a sentence maybe, but nothing more than that. Question number 1, how solid is the $700,000?
I think the $700,000 is pretty solid. Obviously, until you open up the walls, as the architect said, you
That's
can never
too
be
many-
for
too many
sure.
questions. That's
But I think it's pretty good.
Okay.
There's a lot of contingency in
I think
that.
it's pretty good.
The offices that we have, I'm going to have 6 new classrooms. Is there going to be an office required for the director? So that's 7
Yes.
rooms?
It's actually, can I?
Go ahead,
Mr.
anybody.
Pratt, it's not just 6 classrooms, it's 6 areas.
Okay,
So hospitality will be a couple of classrooms, marketing will be 3 classrooms. But there definitely is plans to have a office for the director as well.
Okay, so will any of the classrooms be usable by another class, I mean, a different class? Is that possible?
Not once we phase in a grade 11. So next year will be grade 9 and 10. Year after that, the 10th graders will go to 11,
Okay,
then
good enough.
12. When it's fully phased in, they'll be fully
Okay.
used.
The effort on the other spaces required for the additional space for the current children in the school. We need more room for the children now that are there.
That's
We know-
correct.
We know that, because we've been talking about that. Does this in any way affect whatever needs we've been putting aside for those children?
Well, it's part of what was presented to you a week ago at your council meeting.
Yep.
To go forward on it in addition to Everett High School. That addition, well, once we get some more additional space for vocational, that will free up some space in the school. We also, I don't want to give away everything because we've been having multiple conversations with the mayor. As most of you know, we also have an elementary school into MSBA that's already been approved, and we have about 50 different designs and multiple locations where that would go. We have not come a firm decision on that, so that's something we'd have to come in front with the mayor and speak
Okay.
to you about.
That's good, thank you. Believe it or not, you added that answer to this question I didn't even ask.
I knew what you were going to ask already, Mr. Hanlon.
Do we have any plans at all for the old building, the old
Right.
high school?
Right now, we're just, not for vocational at this time. Right now, we're using the high school for some preschool classrooms and 4 or 5 kindergarten rooms, total of 13 rooms. We may be looking to expand it and start an autistic program.
Okay.
We're getting some
No, that's
numbers
good.
together
I just
on that.
wondered about this program, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Council McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to you, to the guest, I appreciate the invite to the workshops that you've had in the past. They were really helpful to be there, and I'm fully in support of vocational. It really is a huge asset to the community, to the children in our school system. I was a product of vocational when I was at Everett High School back in the early 2000s, and fully support it. My only question is, if this comes before us, I hope that the mayor will give us an opportunity to send this to committee, because I think there's some financial questions to be had. One is streamline of the 700,000. Where does that come from? And I don't see Mr. Demas in the audience any longer, but is that, I don't know if anybody knows that. Is it coming out of free cash or?
Comes from the capital improvement plan, so when that's presented before then, we'll entertain financial questions at that time.
Right, but I think am I wrong by, he said, the mayor said that it would come before CIP was presented to us, this order.
No, the mayor said
correct?
it's part of CIP. So those,
So they'll pull this out of CIP?
it'll be presented to us as part of CIP, and this is just for an information about the plans.
Okay.
This is not to address
Okay.
financial questions. That will come up when those orders come before us.
Perfect. No other questions then at this time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilman Del Sol, your question.
Good evening, gentlemen. Do you know, it might be hard to answer this question, but next year's budget, what would it be, once we do the initial redoing the rooms over and all that, what's the budget going to be coming up every year?
Mr. Lyons put that together for us over the weekend, so he could probably answer that question
Roger,
for
why
you.
don't you,
Yeah, so as was mentioned earlier, there's 4 new teachers that will need to be hired that are vocationally licensed, as well as a director. Whenever you have 5 or more programs, you have to also have someone who's a director of those programs.
Correct.
So that would be the biggest part of it. Outside of that, there's, maybe 20, 30,000 of supplies for the programs. Obviously, the capital piece is the staffing, and the capital is the 2 biggest pieces of that.
I think the biggest factor, Councilor Del Sol, would be if we expand the shops. If we
Correct.
find areas to expand, obviously if we started, I'll use this as an example, plumbing, it would be 1 or 2 plumbing teachers and the equipment necessary. If we can, between ourselves, Mr. Norman and the architect, we can find additional space to be able to offer programs. That would be the biggest expense.
Yeah, and another way to look at it would be that these students would be in single-period electives if they weren't enrolled in the vocational program. So by enrolling in the vocational program, instead of getting a single-period elective over, say, 4 years, which might add up to 450 hours,
Okay.
they're going to get consecutive periods, go deeper in their vocational technical program, and get 1,200 hours of instruction. That's why they're employee-ready when they graduate. But they would be being taught in a different elective if they weren't in consecutive period blocks of a voc tech program.
Okay. Another question I have, what rooms are being taken? What are we losing? These rooms that we're taking out, what is there right now? And once we go in there, are we losing any classes because of this?
Right now, as Mr. Lyons already went over, we're taking an outside storage area that we store some signs and some band equipment in to expand the carpentry area. So taking a non-load bearing wall down. A machine shop, next to machine shop is our print shop. We would probably cut the print shop in about half and expand, take the wall down, expand machine tool technology. Down where, I don't know if people are familiar with where Eagle Bank used to be in the high school. There used to be an Eagle Bank in there. We're gonna take the wall down between Eagle Bank and Central Storage. So right now, that's just some office space that we could move those people out of that office area to other areas in the school. And the other rooms already exist in the school. So like as Roger Bourgeois just said, even though you're taking some rooms in the school, those kids are going to another program, so it's really not affecting another program.
Okay.
Space neutral.
Yeah.
So, and the only real classrooms that we're dedicating are the two that we're taking the wall down for hospitality. But those classrooms that would have kids in them now for single periods, but now there's still going to be kids in those classrooms, so
Right.
it's going to be space neutral.
Okay.
The-
All right.
The other thing I just want to add is that if you don't offer programs, students by law can go anyplace else
Correct.
at a much more expensive cost. So by developing 6 programs, ninth graders will explore at Everett High School. They won't be exploring in other places, which will save part of that $500,000 that you're paying in tuition for 29 students. So there's going to be additional costs, but those costs we think will be offset much more efficiently and effectively off of the programs at Everett High School.
I think it's a great.
And I believe out of the 28 number that I gave you, 8 are aging out this year and are seniors, so we'll be down to about 20.
All right, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Councilman Marchese.
I'm just going to, I spoke to you about the footage of it. You said it'd be 10,000 square feet. I mean, the urgency of the construction concerns me. Something like this, forget about committees, it should go to the committee of the whole. We should get our money, and we should get it in order now, and we should, if we can do it in a week, we should start Monday and get this thing rolling. I think you'll have a very popular, it'll be more popular, people can stay here than being shipped out, so it'll be, like you said, a savings, and I see the kids, the benefits, the jobs, which people going to school, other kids who are getting released, they have no professional trades at all. So, I mean, I've been 100% for this for the past 10, 15 years. And if no one has anything to say, I mean, I'd make a motion, this goes to the committee of the whole for maybe next week. And let's get a vote on this, and let's get the money for these kids. This isn't a lot of money for what the benefits that are gonna reap.
Yeah, this meeting is strictly for information purposes. Okay. It's just
There's no need for a motion on this?
This is not a order, this was just
Then who would
for
be
information.
able,
The
who
mayor
would
has to
call
The
the,
recommendation is to have the mayor call a
The
special
mayor would,
meeting.
because he has
The
to
mayor.
present the money.
so the recommendation?
I'll discuss that with the mayor on my Wednesday meeting. So we
Okay,
get
I
this
would,
on
I
the
would
agenda as
recommend
fast
that
as
we do it in the urgency, let's get it done.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Councilman, one sec, Councilman Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to our invited guests.
Councilman Capone, if you could if I could ask you to hold 1 minute.
Yep.
I want to ask the public to please keep your conversations out in the hallway. They can be heard from up front here, and it's distracting for the members trying to follow the course of the business we're conducting at this moment. Thank you. Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to our guests, probably Mr. Bremski. In the beginning, it sounds to me that the VOC program had phased out years back. Maybe at that time, there was a lack of interest or weren't enough
I think it was
individuals
more due to
sustain
the
it.
MCAS testing and all the state mandatory testing. We wanted to make sure the students had enough time on learning.
Okay.
Where they're still going to have to pass whatever state test there is, just so you people know that. They're not exempt from that. They still
Okay.
have to take that. But with the job market presently, and a number of our students no longer being able to afford college, and the jobs in these areas that we just talked about after doing our labor market study, you don't need a college education to get those good-paying jobs, and they're good-paying jobs.
Absolutely.
So I think
And not everyone goes that route, and that's fine. But there is enough interest now in the school department that we've seen?
Absolutely. We had to do a survey and turn it into the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, showing that there was interest from our 8th grade students.
85% of the 8th and 9th graders were interested in taking
Really?
tech programs. yeah.
That's pretty overwhelming.
Off the survey, yeah.
Yeah.
They were
So,
very-
and I looked at with the cost of travel and tuition, it roughly breaks down to about $18,000 or so per student. So if we do it in-house, obviously, we get rid of travel, and we can bring the cost down. What do we have, I know it's kind of like in an initial stage. What do we intend to have for capacity at this point for students? Availability for those students that want to
So
go into the Vogue program?
because there's only 6 programs, the capacity for the 10th grade will be 105 seats.
Okay,
And then the 11th grade, so eventually it'll phase into 315 seats.
sure.
With just 6 programs, that will be the capacity. And then again, the entire 9th grade class explores the careers.
Right.
So they're getting a career awareness. But right now, it'll only be, unless we're able to add additional programs, it'll cap out at a max of 315.
Okay, and obviously, we want to satisfy all the needs of our student population. And in the event that it swings the other way, I'm sure the surrounding communities would like to take advantage of the opportunity. And then it would be a situation where money would be coming in instead of costing us money. You said within this fiscal year that's being presented, we've got 4 new teachers and 1 director. What are the salaries for those various positions?
It's hard to say at this point, but roughly, the average salary of a teacher in Everett right now is about $65,000. Obviously, the director would be higher because that would be a 12-month position with 226 working days with either 23 or 24 vacation days, depending how Christmas falls.
Okay. And so we're going to start it with this. If we open up the entire 6, do we need additional teachers, or are these 4 going to be able to cover it?
For next year, 4.
Okay.
Director.
And then eventually,
You add juniors and seniors, you'll be adding additional staff.
okay,
Just 3 teachers will fill it out.
okay.
Yeah, that'll-
And it seems like the most expensive part of it, obviously, would be the salaries. And then going forward after that, I think someone said something like $20,000 to $30,000 for supplies. I guess depending on how many students you have. The more students, the more you're going to have with the cost there.
Well, yeah. The answer to the question is yes, although some of the software you'll buy next year will be good software for junior and
Okay.
senior year. The real cost is going to be in the addition. You want to expand these programs for tradesmen's program, licensing programs. That's why the addition to the high school is very important, to offer these license programs as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I don't have any other questions.
Second motion.
If there's no further questions,
I have a motion for customary thanks.
And,
And a second,
motion-
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
a motion to adjourn.
And a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you very much.
All in favor?
Thank you. Thank you.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
There is no.
Keep in mind, John, we reconvene in 5 minutes for our regular order of business.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for the information. Appreciate it. Nice seeing you guys.